Hello everyone, welcome to our Watchmen Series Part 2 Recap. We are happy you are here and we hope you are learning something new from these recaps. Today we are looking at another blueprint for the end times, covenants. Buckle up as we take this journey together.
Have you ever made a promise you really intended to keep, or had someone make a promise to you that meant the world?
Today we're going to talk about God's promises, but these are on a whole other level. They're called covenants, and they are the secret blueprint that God gives us for understanding the end times.
So what is a biblical covenant? It's not just a contract. You and I can break a contract, pay a penalty, and move on. A biblical covenant was a life or death agreement.
The word in Hebrew, berith, literally means a cutting. That's because they would sometimes seal a covenant by cutting animals in half and walking between the pieces.
The message was intense. If I break this promise, may what happened to these animals happen to me.
To make it official, they often used two things. One, an oath. This was the spoken word confirming and agreeing to the terms of the covenant. The Hebrew word for oath is tied to the number 7, so taking an oath was like saying, "This promise is now complete and perfect."
Sometimes there would also be an exchange of gifts in sets of 7 when taking an oath. This was done to show that the oath is complete.
For example, remember when Abraham made a covenant with Abimelech regarding wells? Abraham gave him 7 ewe lambs there at the well. This was to show that the oath he took was complete. The covenant has been finalized. The well itself was called Beersheba, which means well of the oath.
And 2, a sign. This was the physical proof that a covenant has been made. It was something you could see or experience that reminded you of the promise. For example, the rainbow was the sign of the covenant that God made with Noah and all the earth.
When God makes a covenant, it's even more powerful. It becomes like a law of nature. Think about it. The sun rises and sets every single day. We don't worry it's going to stop. God's covenants are that reliable. They are permanent promises woven into the very fabric of the universe.
Let's look at these covenants that form our end-time blueprint. Firstly, there is the covenant God made with Noah. Right after the Great Flood, God made a one-sided promise not just to Noah and his family, but to every living creature and the entire earth. He promised to never again destroy the world with a flood. The sign of this promise is the rainbow, a beautiful reminder we still see today.
Next is the covenant God made with Abraham. This is a big one. God made a one-sided promise to a man named Abraham. When Abraham asked how he could be sure, God had him cut animals in half, and then God's presence, a smoking oven and a burning torch, passed between the pieces alone. God was showing that he alone was responsible for keeping this promise.
The promise had 3 main parts. 1, a huge family, as many descendants as the stars. 2, a specific piece of land, the land of Canaan and regions beyond, forever. 3, a worldwide blessing that would come through his family line. The sign of this promise was circumcision.
Now, let's talk about the covenant God made with the Israelites. It's called the Mosaic Covenant. This was a 2-sided agreement with Abraham's descendants at Mount Sinai. Abraham's descendants weren't always as faithful, so they needed some clear instructions. This was an if-then agreement. There were conditions attached. If you follow my ways, then you will be blessed in the land. If they didn't, there were consequences. The sign for this agreement was the Sabbath.
Up next is the royal promise to David. This is called the Davidic Covenant. This started when King David wanted to build a house for God. God turned it around and sent the prophet Nathan to announce an incredible one-sided promise to David instead. God would build a house for him, a royal dynasty.
God swore an oath that someone from David's family line would always have the right to the throne, and his kingdom would last forever. This is a direct pointer to the Messiah. The angel Gabriel even told Mary that her son Jesus would be given the throne of his father David, and that his kingdom will have no end.
And finally, the covenant God made with the priesthood, called the priestly promise, or the Levitical covenant. God also made a special covenant with the family of his priests. After a priest named Phineas stood up for God's honor, God promised him and his descendants a permanent priesthood forever. This is important because prophecies about a future temple in the end times mention the descendants of Phineas serving in it.
So how does this all tie into the future? Well, there's a common idea that because of disobedience, God is done with the nation of Israel and has replaced them with the church. This belief is known as replacement theology. But when we believe this concept, we don't just get the future wrong, we get God's character wrong.
God actually points this out in the Bible. He mentions people who say he has rejected Israel and that they are no longer being a nation in their sight. But God's answer is incredible, and it comes in two parts.
First, speaking about the promises to David and the priests, he says this: "If you can break my covenant with the day and the night, then my covenant with David, my servant, and with the Levitical priests can be broken."
Then he says the same thing about the nation of Israel as a whole. As long as the sun, moon, and stars keep their fixed order, Israel will never cease to be a nation before me forever. In other words, God's covenants are eternal and are as reliable as the sunrise.
So what's the bottom line for us? It's simple. God keeps his promises. He is a covenant-keeping God. His word is settled, permanent, and more reliable than anything we know. This is how seriously he takes his promises. The Bible even says he has magnified his word above his own name.
His covenants are the ultimate expression of who he is. A biblical view of the end times must include God fulfilling these covenants that he made with Abraham, David, and the Levites through the nation of Israel, their descendants.
These covenants shape the end times and will continue beyond. The same God who made these unbreakable, world-shaping, everlasting covenants is the one who makes promises to us in Scripture. His word is trustworthy, from Genesis to Revelation, and for our lives today.
Thanks for joining us on this Watchmen Series Part 2 recap. Join us for Part 3. If you were taught that Sunday law is the mark of the beast, then you won't want to miss it. We will dive into the history of this belief.
If these covenants are new to you, we encourage you to watch this video again. Get familiar with them. Until next time, Shalom, Shalom.